Okay, here we are in Max. We've got our chimney, we've got our basic model in. That's enough to help us place our camera. Now, let me start from scratch. And one thing we're going to have to get in here that's going to help us place these things is those bookcase things. These four things, because those, well, mostly this one, and this one. You'll see all those in your camera, in the view, if you're looking at the photo. So those should be in there, but I'm going to show you how to place the camera. Let's see, let me put those in real quick and then we'll place the camera. Okay, now at least as reference, those bookcases are in there, and that'll help us as we're trying to match the perspective of our photo. So, as I've mentioned a few times in this course, I showed you the V-Ray camera already. Now let me show you the new camera with 2016 and V-Ray 3.0. They actually got rid of the V-Ray camera. Imagine a big frowny face emoji on my screen right now, because I love the V-Ray camera. I hate the new one, but whatever. It has essentially the same settings. So now if you go to camera, V-Ray, that just gives you a V-Ray dome camera, which is not what we want. We want a standard camera and go to physical. This is what they've replaced the V-Ray camera with. Now we know from the photo, let's look at it real quick. Okay, we know from the photo that the camera is not very high off the ground and we're catching a little bit of this on the left. And like I talked about in the last video, the camera's actually probably going to catch a bunch more over here, but it appears to be cropped out later. So let's go back to our scene and let's place it so we catch that left part of that bookcase. I think it's about right. Well, and we also know that this line of the roof, that line right there, is right in line with the camera. So you can barely see that, but it's right, let's say right about here is where that camera is going to go. It's going to be looking basically straight down that line. That's how that line ends up straight. Let's move it up a little bit. So we've already got a pretty good look at what that camera is going to look like. Now this setting here is the pan camera setting, and we can look up. Now see how that line's perfectly straight right there? Now obviously we're in about the right location, but let's right click up here where it says physical camera and select camera. Go to modify, but we're zoomed in too much obviously. So let's go to these settings. These are the physical camera settings. And and one note, when you put a physical camera in your scene, it will automatically turn on physical camera exposure control, which I don't like to use. And if we're used to doing it the way we had with the V-Ray camera, then we controlled all the exposure in camera. So we never needed this. So this can really throw you for a loop because it'll change all your lighting. So I just turn it off, and I'll show you how to do it without that. And focal length obviously is too much right now. So if we zoom out until we can see that bookcase on the left right there, then we might be about in the right spot. Let's go up a little bit, pan up a little bit. Now if you notice in the picture again, you'll see that we actually see this side of this big skylight up here, and it's perfectly horizontal. So we need to tilt our camera up some more. Now another way to do this, I'll show you in just a second. Okay, there. Let's undo that and I'll show you another way to do it. If you go to right click on the camera name and select camera target, right now your camera target is selected, and you can right click and say move, bring up the settings dialog box, and move your target in the Z axis like that. Okay, so right about there, that's actually really close to our camera view already, isn't it? Doesn't that look pretty close? So let's go to select camera. And I'm thinking that we actually need to be a little further back probably. Now, let me tell you my thinking. So in the picture, we don't actually see a gap right there. See that? And we also see more of this bookcase up here that's on the left over here. Right now we're not seeing that. So what does that tell you? What can we do to make it show it more accurately? And we actually don't see, we see a little more wall there. So let's start adjusting to see if we can get it more close. But we're on a good start. We've got this line straight. We've got all our verticals straight. Oh, and let me show you the perspective control setting here inside the physical camera. Now I showed you this earlier in the course on the V-Ray camera. This is for the physical camera, perspective control right here. And you can just do the auto vertical tilt correction. If it's not on auto, it's going to look more like this. Just put it on auto and it'll automatically do it for you. Now the horizontal is an interesting one. You'll see that that will kind of tilt your picture. Now in the actual photograph, this line is perfectly straight. So we might make use of that horizontal tilt correction. Just very subtly, because you'll notice that it's tilting everything back here, which we don't want. So it'd have to be very subtle, but just to get that perfectly straight. Like that, right there. And that's at 0.02, so it's very, very subtle. But look, all our horizontals are horizontal now, and our verticals are vertical, so that's awesome. But we need to make sure our camera's in the right place too. So this is where we have to find the right balance between camera location and zoom angle. So right there, now we're seeing just a little bit of that wall, and this line's straight and everything, but we're seeing too far over onto the side here. So what that tells me is we're probably actually back here, and then up a little bit. And then we can zoom in and get the same amount of that plus this, and now we don't have this gap over here. See how that works? Now we know our camera's right in the right location from left to right, so we don't want to mess that up. But we can move it forward and back to see if we can get better results. So actually right about there. Now imagine this being cropped off right here. Does that look pretty much like our camera? To me it does. Let's minimize this down like this. That's pretty dang close. Look, this distance from here to here is very similar to this distance. Now where this is crashing in here seems a little too high because this one crashes in way down here. I'm not sure how we can adjust that. Our ceiling height might be too high. So we actually don't know the ceiling height. So maybe it'd be better like that. But then this line comes in the wrong place. So that might not be the right answer. These are all things that you'll have to tweak and consider. It does look like my ceilings are overall a little too high. They seem like they should be more like right there. Which would mean I could come up here and then zoom out. No, that's not going to work. It means I could look down a little bit. Like that right there. That actually looks pretty close. Anyway, these are all things you need to tweak and figure out. That looks close to me as well. This is the kind of thing that can take you a long time to get just right. But really, if you're not concerned about that and you just want to make a cool image, you can see this is no longer straight here. Now it is. What I would suggest in this scenario is just making sure that this line and this line are straight, and then all your verticals and horizontals are generally straight, because that's what makes this a nice composition. So instead of worrying about getting an exact match on the camera, make sure that the essential parts of this composition, which is basically the straight lines here, all add up in your scene, and it's going to look nice. So what I just showed you should give you the tools you need. It's basically these perspective controls. These controls down here, dollying camera and panning camera, and moving your targets, and then adjusting your focal length. And that should give you all the tools you need to adjust to make sure that you get the right camera view for your scene. So try that out. Try to match it as close as you can. See if you can do it better than I can. I would love it if you can. Post it on the forums. Ask questions if you need to. And I'm excited to see what you got.